Being a sports fan can be very heartbreaking or very exciting. Over the past decade or so, I would say most Detroit sports fans have probably experienced more heartbreak than excitement. Most of us live in Michigan and are fans of some sports teams, whether that being Detroit teams or Chicago teams or whatever. So with that being said, I think it's important for most sports fans to know why that the Detroit teams specifically have been so bad over the last 10 or so years. The state of the teams in Detroit have had a lot of success in over the last 100 years. But right now, all four of them are at a low point, and probably the lowest point they've been in a very, very long time. All of those teams being the Detroit Lions, the Detroit Tigers, the Detroit Red Wings, and the Detroit Pistons. All four teams have their struggles, and I'm going to highlight one main reason why each one of those teams is really so bad right now. I'm going to start with the Detroit Red Wings. So the Detroit Red Wings have been probably the best team in Detroit for a very long time. They were a playoff team for 25 straight years, which according to a stat from NHL.com says that is the third longest streak in NHL history. I think because of that success, that almost leads to towards the downfall that they are experiencing now. The success that they had was mostly because of a few players, and when those few players got older, the other younger guys didn't really step up, and the development of those younger guys kind of tapered off a little bit, and that led to what they're at now, which is a rebuild. The Detroit Red Wings are currently positioned in dead last in the entire hockey league, and they probably will finish dead last if there ever is more hockey to be played. In this case, though, I think that the development of these younger guys was really the main reason that the rebuild is having to take place. Now that I've talked a little bit about the Detroit Red Wings and their downfall and how the development of the younger guys is kind of to blame a little bit for the rebuild that they're in now, we're going to talk a little bit about why the Lions are historically one of the worst teams in the NFL. So they are one of the worst teams in the NFL because of the ownership, really. They've been owned under two specific owners for 100 years or so. The owners are William Clay Ford and Martha Ford, his wife. William Clay Ford died 5 or so years ago, and he owned the team for a very, very long time. During his tenure as the owner, they experienced mild success in the 1950s, winning a couple championships before the Super Bowl era began. And since then, the Detroit Lions have one playoff win in franchise history. And that playoff win came almost 30 years ago. According to an article from SidelineLionReport.com, Lions ownership has been handcuffed this year by the general manager, saying that the Lions ownership has been handcuffed from the general manager, and he is not able to do his job because the owners have placed so much pressure on him, specifically this year. The Lions have been notorious for losing pretty much their entire tenure in the NFL, and specifically this year, it's not supposed to be a whole lot better. The owner has placed an ultimatum on the coaching staff and the general manager that they need to win this year or they're more than likely going to be fired. And by doing that, it makes it hard for them to create a team for now and the future. As I said before, they have one playoff win in 30 years. That is pretty much one of the worst teams, one of the worst streaks in NFL or in all sports. So now that I've kind of explained a little bit about why the Detroit Lions have been historically one of the worst teams in all of football, I'm going to talk a little bit about why the Detroit Tigers have experienced such a downfall over the past 10 or so years too. So right now the Detroit Tigers are one of the worst teams in baseball, but it wasn't always that way. About 5 or 10 years ago, they were competing for World Series championships almost on the yearly. They won a lot of games over a lot of years, and quickly it turned bad. Over the last 2 or 3 years, they have been kind of on a downward spiral into becoming one of the worst teams in baseball. And this year, they're projected to be the worst team in baseball again for the second consecutive year. The reason that they are right now one of the worst teams in baseball is probably because they're in the middle of a rebuild as well. So the rebuild that they're in now is mostly because they didn't really trade the guys they needed to at the time they needed to. They're experiencing younger guys, they experienced older guys not really performing at the level they needed to perform at, and they didn't trade them at their prime when they needed to continue the winning culture in Detroit. So the rebuild that they're in now is projected to be a very long rebuild and very unpredictable. They can take a long time, rebuilds can. In an article written by Anthony Finnick of the Detroit Free Press, he states the general manager of the Tigers estimates that they will be back in contention for the playoffs maybe by 2023. So that's still 3 more years away, and they've been bad for 2 or so years already. So with that being said, the Tigers will probably continue to be a doormat team in Major League Baseball for a couple more years, with no signs of success coming for a couple more years. So now that I've talked a little bit about why the Detroit Tigers are in the middle of a rebuild and why they are actually really bad right now too, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Detroit Pistons, the fourth Detroit team that is a professional team in the big city. So the Pistons have had a lot of success over their time in Detroit as well. They've won championships over the last 30 years, maybe twice. Last year, they actually had some success by making the playoffs, being the only Detroit team to do that in the last 3 years. They might have made the playoffs, but then they got swept in the first round and they lost 4 games in a row. So even though they made the playoffs, they didn't really make the playoffs and compete for anything. So the reason that they have been kind of a mediocre team in the NBA and not very good is because they can't commit to either winning or rebuilding. Their owner, Tom Gores, wants to win and wants to win bad, but he hasn't really put together the right team to do so. And the reason that they are mediocre is because he hasn't committed to a rebuild. That could have changed though during this year when they traded one of their better players. If the Pistons make the right decision and go towards a rebuild, then maybe they will be competitive in a couple years or so. But by doing that, a rebuild means that they are going to be one of the worst teams in the NBA for a couple years or so. So, in conclusion, I discussed the current state of all 4 major Detroit sports teams, that being the Detroit Lions, the Detroit Red Wings, the Detroit Tigers, and the Detroit Pistons. None of these teams have really experienced much success over the past 5 years, other than maybe mild playoff berth here and there that didn't really amount to much. So with that being said, if you are a Detroit sports fan, I feel your pain. I've been a Detroit sports fan for my entire life, and I have experienced a little bit of excitement, but it's been mostly heartbreak for me as a fan of these teams. And losing has become the new normal for most of us fans, and I think by letting you guys know why these teams are so bad, I think that it's important for other fans of other teams to understand that it's not always been this way, and hopefully it won't stay this way in Detroit. Hopefully all these teams are able to find some success in the coming years and compete for world championships and being at the top of the level that they need to be at to compete. Thank you for listening.